Former Zag Luka Krajnovic is joining Croatia's national team, and his new teammate is of special interest to Gonzaga fans.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, folks, quite a few former Zags had big final games in the NBA Summer League. We're going to talk about that, some big performances from those guys, what it might mean for their chances of sticking in the league. Also, Memphis, the Tigers' $250 million bid to get into the Big 12 was quickly rebuffed by the conference. What does that mean for them? What does it mean for the Pac-12 and perhaps for Gonzaga? We'll talk about that. But first, news out of the Eurobasket tournament. Luka Krajnovic, former Gonzaga guard, announced on Instagram a few days ago that he will be joining the Croatian senior men's national team. This is the same event that features upcoming Gonzaga guard. I was going to say current. I guess he's not quite yet a current Gonzaga guard, Mario Saint-Superi, who will be joining the same team or the same event for the Spanish national team for this Eurobasket event. It also sounds like Filip Petrusev is going to represent Serbia in this event as well. So there's going to be some former Zags, an upcoming Zag, all sorts of Gonzaga attention in this event. Not a surprise, of course, as Gonzaga has been so heavily involved in recruiting internationally over the last few decades that whenever there are big European basketball events, they tend to feature quite a few players with Gonzaga ties. So we already talked about this event, Mario Saint-Superi participating for Spain and taking him away from some time that he could be spending in Spokane with the Zags. But for Luka Krajnovic, obviously, he played his year at Gonzaga. He's back in Croatia. The main kind of draw here, the main reason that this is at least notable is that one of the other players on this Croatian team is Ivan Bogdanovic. If you recall an episode on July 10th, so a little over a week ago, we spoke about Ivan Bogdanovic, a 6'8" forward from Croatia, 21 years old, who is looking to come to the United States and play college basketball. The fact that he is now teammates with somebody who made the journey from Croatia to Spokane to play college basketball cannot hurt Gonzaga's chances of landing Ivan Bogdanovic. And yes, I know that Luka Krajnovic's 1 year in Spokane, he unfortunately dealt with a hand injury, missed about a half of the season, was really not in a position where he could carve out a consistent role in his freshman year. Again, in part because of that injury. I think had that not happened, we probably would have seen him play a little bit more. But all told, Luka only played 16 games for the Zags. He averaged about 3 points, a little over 1 rebound in just about 8 minutes per game. After the season, towards the very end of the window to enter the transfer portal, Luka Krajnovic, I think it was like on literally the last day that you could enter the transfer portal, Krajnovic's name was entered into the portal. About a day later, Gonzaga landed a commitment from Khalif Battle out of the transfer portal. Those two things are connected. I believe that Gonzaga was needing to clear a roster spot and encouraged Krajnovic to look for other options. Unfortunately for Luka, or fortunately, I guess, depending on kind of how he feels about it, he did not find another home in college basketball. There were some connections to some schools. There was a school in Chicago that he was looking at for a while, reportedly, but he ended up deciding to just forego his college basketball career and go back home to Croatia to play professionally. He played for Cedevita Junior last year, played 33 games for that club, and was excellent, averaged just under 13 points, about 3.5 boards, a little over 2 assists, shot 46% from three. Shout out Luka for having a phenomenal professional season with Cedevita Junior. It's also worth noting that Ivan Bogdanovic, not this last year, but 2 years ago, also played for Cedevita Junior. So they were not teammates there. Unfortunately, they missed each other by 1 year. The year that Luka was playing in Spokane with Gonzaga was the year that Bogdanovic was playing for that club, where he averaged about 9 points and 4 boards for that team. But yeah, there's a connection here. And again, I can't say confidently what Luka or if Luka is going to say anything to him, but certainly, again, it cannot hurt. It cannot hurt to have a player there who can say, talk about Gonzaga, hopefully say good things about Gonzaga, and kind of be able to potentially, again, this is where Gonzaga's consistency in terms of recruiting internationally comes into favor. I mean, we've seen this before where Gonzaga has used former players to kind of help try to recruit future players. And that's not obviously what they're doing directly here. And I don't know how much contact or if there's much contact with Krajnovic. But again, the fact that Gonzaga is a known entity overseas helps them with brand recognition and helps, put them on the radar for prospects that they may not otherwise be kind of in the mix for. I remember a few years ago when Gonzaga hosted Nolan Traore on a recruiting visit. They brought Killian Tilly to the game that Traore was at, and Killian Tilly just sat with him and talked, and they're both French. And that was a designed kind of thing to try to help convince Traore to ultimately come to Gonzaga. It did not work, but Gonzaga did not lose the recruiting battle to another school. He just decided to stay in France and play professionally as opposed to coming to the United States. But for Bogdanovic, he was kind of a late notice that he wanted to pursue playing at the college level. But since he's been on that radar, the Zags are not the only team that has pursued him. Louisville, Michigan State, and Texas A&M have all reached out. This is per Armin Jovic on Twitter. We've also heard rumblings that both Kansas and Wisconsin are in the mix here as well. Bogdanovic really kind of put himself on the map with a strong performance in the FIBA U20 Eurobasket event last summer, where on that U20 team he averaged 18 points, 5.5 boards, 2 assists in 7 games. He had a 29-point outburst against Finland. So when he's played against players around his age, when he was 20 years old playing against 18, 19, 20-year-olds, he was electric. Again, 18 points, 5.5 boards. When he's played professionally, he most recently played at the top level of the ABA, which is one of the top leagues in Europe. And he only played 8 minutes a game, only averaged 2.5 points. But again, this is kind of what we've talked about with Mario Saint-Superi and other international players coming over, that like judging their numbers when they're a teenager or in their early 20s playing against 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds, 27-year-olds, whatever it may be, like, you got to take that a little bit with a grain of salt. And that's why coaches really value seeing them compete against their peers, which is why these U18, U20, U19 events, I think, carry a lot of weight, because that's your best chance to see how does this guy look compared to the other players in his country, in his age group. And Bogdanovic is somebody who's really who thrived in that environment and thrived against that competition. So a player to keep an eye on, just watching the tape on him that we've seen at this point. He moves extremely well without the ball. He loves relocating for outside shots. He hits some threes off the dribble. He loves getting out in transition, finishes well with both hands. I think for Gonzaga, this is a team that the only real hole on their roster still is backup power forward. You're not going to play Graham Ike and Braden Huff 40 minutes each. Obviously, you have Ismaila Diani, but between the three of them, that still doesn't cover all of the minutes in the front court. And also, all three of those guys are centers. I know Huff and Ike are going to start together almost certainly, and so one of them will be playing the 4. But between foul issues and potentially some conditioning concerns with some of them, I think they're going to need somebody else to soak up a lot of minutes at the 4. I think the front runner right now is Steele Venters, provided he is healthy, to kind of play a small ball 4 role. I think Parker Jefferson, the incoming freshman, who's a 3-star center or a 3-star prospect, but he's 6'10". I think he could potentially be somebody who fills in some of those minutes right away as well. But this is also why Gonzaga is pursuing Ivan Bogdanovic, 21 years old, 6'8", shoots the 3 ball well. He is a small ball 4 prototype, and with his age and experience level, he could absolutely step into that role as soon as his freshman year, even if he's not getting to campus until August, which is the likely outcome if he were to choose to stay the college route, whether it's at Gonzaga or somewhere else. If he's going to participate with Croatia, he's not going to be getting on campus until like mid-August. So wouldn't be ideal, certainly, but for Gonzaga, he would be a really great kind of final piece to the roster for this team. And it's worth at least acknowledging the connection that now exists while he's on the same team as Luka Krajnovic for this Croatia national team in Eurobasket. But more than any of that, I also just want to give a shout out to Luka. What an incredible accomplishment at his age to be representing his country on the national team. He's playing with former NBA player Mario Hezonja is on that roster. Current Sacramento Kings center Dario Saric is on this roster. It's an incredibly cool opportunity for both Luka and Ivan to get this chance. And so I think they more than deserve the shout out here. But yeah, also worth keeping an eye on what this could potentially mean for Gonzaga. Speaking of things and what they might mean for Gonzaga, Memphis reportedly put together a bid over $200 million to try to get into the Big 12, but the conference, quote, showed no interest. So what does that mean? What does it mean for Memphis, for Gonzaga, for the Pac-12? All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, do you ever decide at the last minute that you want to head to a ball game with your friends or your family? Maybe it's game day and you're like, you know what? It's way too nice of a day for me to spend this inside. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress and hassle. And with the money that you save, you can splurge on foods or drinks or merchandise or just bring more people with you. Gametime makes that possible because prices on the app, they actually go down the closer that you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is also the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an upcoming MLB game. Or, if you're like me and you love minor league baseball, the Spokane Indians are hosting the Hillsboro Hops on July 29th. Tickets right down the first base line. Last week, they were $19. This week, you can get them for $16. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Or basically buy one, get one. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Switching away from our conversation about Luka Krajnovic joining 21-year-old Ivan Bogdanovic on the Croatian senior men's national team ahead of Eurobasket to talk about conference realignment. And while we're not actually talking specifically about Gonzaga or the Pac-12, this storyline, which came out on Tuesday early afternoon, definitely involves those things, at least tangentially. There was a report originally from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports that Memphis made a bid to join the Big 12 that included securing over $200 million in sponsorship commitments as part of the bid. They basically said, we have the ability, if you accept us, Big 12, to raise over $200 million in sponsorship money. Part of this deal that Memphis was very desperately pleading with the Big 12 to agree to was them also saying, we are willing to forego conference revenue distributions for at least 5 years. That reporting was done by Matt Norlander of CBS Sports. Meaning Memphis said, basically, we're going to round up $200 million, be able to have that money in the bank for us. And we're going to say, you as a conference, the schools that are worried about, hey, we don't want to accept another school because that's going to cut into our revenue. One more program means a little bit less money for each of the member schools. Memphis said, no problem. For a half decade or more, we won't take any of that money. SMU did the same thing when they joined the ACC a few years ago when they came in alongside Stanford and Cal. SMU didn't take any of the revenue distribution. They did not raise a whole bunch of money, but they didn't take any of the revenue distribution. And that was kind of viewed as like, oh, SMU's like, really we're kind of desperate to try to get into the conference. So what Memphis is doing is an unprecedented level of, for lack of a better word, desperation. Like, we desperately want the Big 12, and we're going to raise millions, hundreds of millions of dollars and forego millions of dollars in order to get into your conference. And the Big 12 had quick meetings and basically very immediately said, nah, we'll pass. That stood out to me of like all the reporting that we've seen at this point is that it wasn't even much of a conversation. That this bid by the Big 12 or by Memphis and the Memphis AD was going around to all the other ADs and presidents in the Big 12, meeting with people individually, telling them about his plan. Like, they made this huge, gargantuan effort to get the attention of the Big 12 to try to grease some palms, to do whatever they can to get this conference to invite them and give them a bid. And the Big 12 had a quick meeting and just said, nah, we're good. No, thank you. So this is what we know. Memphis is desperate. They do not want to be in the American Conference anymore. And yes, it is now the American Conference, by the way, not the American Athletic Conference. They went under a rebrand and just decided they're going by the American. So we're gonna honor that for them. But this is we know the Big 12 is a little bit stodgy. We saw this with Gonzaga. We saw this with UConn when both programs were kind of, it's the same sort of thing. Brett Yormark gets all excited. He's the commissioner of the conference, and he's out there saying, we'd love to build a basketball conference. We'd love to be coastal to coastal. We'd love, programs like Gonzaga, programs like UConn. And then they go to a meeting, and the conference ADs and the conference presidents are saying, no, we're good. We don't want that. We're good. We don't want to, and like I'm calling them stodgy. They've added 8 schools in the last couple of years. Like, they're obviously not anti-realignment or anti-expansion. They have to be. It's an adapt or die world. If the Big 12 was just sitting on their hands, they would cease to exist very soon. We saw that already with the old version of the Pac-12. So this is, I think a move for the Big 12 is pretty clear indication that we're not opposed to some level of expansion, but we're not going to expand just to expand. And if we don't view that your brand or your, whatever you are at this point is worth adding to our conference, no amount of money, clearly huge amounts of money or promises or anything like that is going to change our mind. So part of this conversation is, what does this mean for Memphis next? And could it, in theory, push Memphis to turn around and try to join the Pac-12? My instinct is probably not. Memphis wants the Big 12 because the Big 12 is a power conference, which the Pac-12 doesn't really have that status anymore. While we don't know the full scope of the Pac-12's media rights deal, we can say with a fair amount of safety that the Big 12 is not only bigger, but much bigger, 3 times bigger, potentially. And also geographically, the Big 12 makes way more sense. The Big 12 is like the perfect power conference for Memphis from a geographic perspective. The SEC is similarly good, but Memphis is not getting in the SEC, so it doesn't really matter. The Big 12 makes a lot of sense for Memphis. More sense than the Big East makes geographically, more sense than the ACC makes geographically. The Big 12 is a very logical fit for Memphis. The Pac-12 is not. The Pac-12 does not have the same amount of money, would not get Memphis the same amount of money that they would get in the Big 12, or even that they're getting in the American. It's close. It's close between the two. Again, without knowing the full scope of the Pac-12's media deal, most of the reporting out there indicates that Memphis did not feel like the Pac-12's media, what Memphis would make from the Pac-12 was going to be substantially bigger than what they make from the American, and or at least not enough to offset the cost of travel. And I think that's a huge part of this, because I think some people hear that and think, oh my gosh, the Pac-12 is not even going to make as much money as the American. I think the Pac-12 schools will make more than the American schools, but not enough to offset what would be a massive amount of travel that Memphis would have to do in order to park all of their sports in the Pac-12. So I don't think that Memphis's huge, desperate plea to the Big 12 to add them necessarily means they're any more or less inclined to join the Pac-12. It's just it's proof that they really want out of the American Conference, which I understand. It's also another storyline that is not positive for Memphis. Memphis has had a no good, very bad offseason. First, they lose PJ Haggerty, their star player and All-American. He declares for the draft, withdraws from the draft, enters the transfer portal, goes to Kansas State, is getting paid less money reportedly at Kansas State than Memphis had offered him. That's a huge bummer. You lose your best player, and you're a mid-major program that loses your best player to a power conference team, a Big 12 team also, and it's not even because of money. That sucks. That's a huge bummer for Memphis. Beyond that, they now are on a 2-year probation for academic fraud. Now, this is part of their no good, very bad offseason, but granted, a lot of people think they got off easy with a 2-year probation for this case. It sounds like it was an academic support specialist at Memphis who was paying softball players to take tests and do homework assignments for football players or basketball players. I can't remember which, for the Memphis program. So that's pretty bad. And that's going to typically result in a lot of trouble. And a 2-year probation is pretty minor for them. But still, 2-year probation is not good by any stretch. Nolan Smith, one of their strongest assistant coaches, leaves for a head coaching job at Tennessee State. Sincere Parker, one of their better players on the roster, charged with aggravated assault, and then the Big 12 rejects them. All of that happened just in this offseason. And honestly, Memphis continuing to be in the news for things like players getting in trouble and academic issues and huge amounts of roster overhaul. Last year, Penny Hardaway, like the four of their coaches lost their jobs like right before the season started. They had a player, Tyreek Smith, suspended and then like left the team right as the season began as well. Like this is a continued pattern that happens at Memphis. So I can kind of understand why the Big 12 might be like, you know what? It's just a little exhausting. Like we don't want to deal with the headaches. Would I have expected the Big 12 to reject a program that was willing to accept no revenue distribution for a half decade and had a bid for $250 million? No. I think I would. I'm surprised to hear that. But Memphis is a bit of a risk in a lot of ways. I don't think this results in them going to the Pac-12. And while I think that the Pac-12 would be very happy to get Memphis, even with all of their warts, because they need high-profile programs, and there's not a lot of them out there that could be reasonable targets for the conference, I can understand why the Big 12 passed. And I can understand why Memphis is in a little bit of a panic, a little bit of a free fall right now as they try to figure out what their future looks like, both in football and in men's basketball. Well, folks, Anton Watson and Khalif Battle each scored 21 points in their final summer league games. We're going to talk about how much that may have helped their chances of playing in the league this year, coming up in just a second. But first, folks, do you ever wish managing your money just felt a little bit easier? Because with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's kind of like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility of and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a generic budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I found that I would way rather have everything in one spot. I don't want to have multiple spreadsheets or 4 different apps. I want everything in one place. It makes that day-to-day management of my finances much, much easier. So folks, take control of your finances by using Monarch Money. And use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com, and you will get 50% off for your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, LOCKEDONCollege code for half off your first year. All right, folks, closing out the show with our final update, at least our final individual update, I should say, on NBA Summer League as it wrapped up on Sunday, July 20th was where the final games were. The Charlotte Hornets are your Summer League champions. No Zags on that roster. They do have Con Knippel from Duke and Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton, among many others. But yeah, I wanted to give an update on a few of the guys who played over the weekend. And for those of you who are our everyday listeners, if you listen to Wednesday's episode of Locked On Zags, which is coming out tomorrow, you will hear a great interview that I did on Friday with Theo Lawson of the Spokesman Review. And Theo and I talked about Summer League quite a bit. We talked about Drew Timme and Ryan Nembhard, but we did talk about some of the guys we're going to talk about here with the caveat in that show, knowing that, hey, these guys are not done. And a lot of times the last few games of Summer League are when guys who didn't play a ton in the first part, they get some run towards the end. So Theo and I had conversations about, we haven't seen a lot from Nolan. We haven't seen a lot from Ben or Khalif or Anton. And that's going to sound outdated because it was recorded prior to these games happening. So just want to give you the little caveat there ahead of time for those of you who listened to that interview with Theo. Still check it out. Fantastic stuff. But here's the most recent update on how some of our Zags did in Summer League. Start with Anton Watson. Anton Watson's final game with the New York Knicks. He had 21 points in 24 minutes of action. He also had 6 boards, 3 assists, and a turnover. He was 3 of 5 on 2-point attempts, but crucially, he was 5 of 8 from beyond the arc. Crucially, not only in the sense that he made 5 3-pointers, which is tremendous, he took 8 of them. This is where Anton Watson needs to prove he can be effective. If he cannot consistently knock down open threes, his chances of sticking in the NBA are astronomically low. But if he can, every other part of his game, his size, his strength, his physicality, his defensive mobility, his defensive IQ, all of that is NBA caliber. It's just the need to be able to space the floor. So going 5 of 8 from 3, even if it's a 1-game sample size, is critical for Anton Watson. He has a leg up over all of these players because he's already played in the NBA. It is much, much easier to make the NBA when you've already done it. And for Anton, having a game like this is critical for his chances of getting back to the association this year. Khalif Battle also had a 21-point game in the NBA Summer League. He was, of course, playing for the Phoenix Suns. 23 minutes of action for Phoenix. He had 21 points, 5 assists, 4 boards. He did have 4 turnovers, but yeah, I think you take the good with the bad for Khalif. 5 of 6 on his 2-point attempts, also 3 of 5 from 3. So an insanely efficient overall day for Khalif. He was also 2 of 2 from the charity stripe. Good to see him finally have that breakthrough game. For those of you who longtime listeners, everyday listeners to the show, you know we talked a lot about how I thought Khalif Battle could be kind of a breakout Summer League star. His style of play seemed to really fit what Summer League is, but he didn't get a lot of opportunities. And even when he did, he started a game early in the Summer League and he had like 7 points. He played okay, but just wasn't all that aggressive and wasn't really looking for his own shots. In this game, he was looking for his own shot, getting downhill, trying to score at the rim, and looked like that player that we saw him be at Gonzaga, like the player he was previously at Arkansas and Temple. And that's great. I think for Khalif still, the challenge is that the role that he's good at is not a role that's likely going to be readily available to him in the NBA. Nobody's signing Khalif Battle and putting him in a position to have the ball in his hands and constantly be looking to score. That's just in the NBA. If you're not the guy, if you're not player one, you're a role player, and your role players are often, flooding to the corner and hitting open threes and looking, playing good defense. And Battle's okay at that stuff, but his best skill set just doesn't really translate to the NBA with what teams would be looking for him to do. Still great to see him do this. I could see him absolutely having a productive season in the G League and getting a look at the NBA level, particularly towards the end of the season when guys like that tend to get those opportunities, and him having a great game like this certainly helps. Nolan Hickman got a chance with the Dallas Mavericks. He played sparingly in their first few games, but after Cooper Flagg was shut down and after his teammate Ryan Nembhard was shut down, Hickman got a chance in his final game and took advantage of it. 13 points and a pair of assists. He also had 1 steal, did not have a turnover, 2 of 4 on 2-pointers, 3 of 5 from deep, had a great blow-by for an easy lane where he just absolutely cooked a dude with his ball handling skills. It was really fun to see him do that. It was fun to see him have a good game. Looked like that confident version of Nolan that we saw at times during his 4 years in Spokane. 3 of 5 from 3. I mean, again, similar to Watson. That's what Nolan needs to do. Nolan doesn't have a lot of other skills that are NBA caliber. And that sounds mean, but it's just a fact. He's not very big. He's a hardworking defender, but is physically limited on that end. He's not a great passer. He's not really a point guard. He needs to be an elite 3-point shooter to have much of a chance of making it to the NBA. 3 of 5 in a game like this is definitely going to help. Then we got Ben Gregg. Ben Gregg had a great final game as well, playing with the Boston Celtics. 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal and a turnover in 20 minutes of action. Perfect 2 of 2 from the 2-point line, and then 3 of 5 from beyond the arc for him. Everybody's shooting it well from 3. Battle, Hickman, Gregg all went 3 of 5. Anton went 5 of 8. Just phenomenal to see all these guys absolutely lights out from deep. Great to see Ben end on a high note. Ben's not making the NBA because he's going to France to go play for CIS Strasbourg, a French club that also features Fousseyni Traore from BYU and Adama Alpha Ball from Santa Clara. This was just a great send-off for Ben, a cool opportunity for him to put up nice numbers while wearing a Boston Celtics jersey. Awesome to see, but doesn't really change the storyline for Ben, as we already know where he's headed. Last but not least, Jeremy Jones played his final game with the Memphis Grizzlies. 9 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 18 minutes. 3 of 4 on 2-pointers, 1 of 2 from 3. It's crazy that Jeremy Jones shooting 50% from 3 is the worst percentage out of these 5 players in his final game of the Summer League. Jeremy Jones looks like he's going to play the same role he played last year in the G League. He was with Rio Grande Valley last year. This year, presumably, he will be with the Memphis Hustle, Memphis's G League affiliate, although we don't know that for sure. But Jones last year in the G League was good. He played a bench role, but he played 15, 20 minutes per game, played great defensively, hit open shots, did kind of exactly what he did at Gonzaga. And that's what he did here in the Summer League. And so I expect him to continue doing that. Big shout out to Jeremy, by the way, had a very, very productive career overseas, played phenomenally in Japan for many years, and then came home, has a child, recently had a kid with his wife, Ellie Tinkle, who played at Gonzaga and is the daughter of Oregon State head coach Wayne Tinkle, by the way. So Jeremy said, I'm coming home. I'm going to have my family here in the United States. I'm going to start playing in the G League, and just really cool thing to see. I would love nothing more than for Jeremy Jones to get just one chance to play in the NBA, because of all the former Gonzaga players, Jeremy Jones would not be very close to high on my list of players I'd expect to someday make the NBA. But hey, man, if the chips fall in the perfect way, I could see it happening for Jeremy, where there's some injuries and he gets a call up and he gets a chance. And I just think that would be one of the coolest stories for Gonzaga if he was able to do that. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you hanging out in the Locked On Zags Discord community. Like I said, we got that interview with Theo lined up for you all on Wednesday. That'll be the final show of the week, as I will be out of town. So if there's any updates, anything happens, you're looking for anything on that, I will have an update for you when I get back from my vacation next week. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day and rest of the week. And of course, as always, go Zags.